Thanks for staying with us. We're going to start with the nation. Bye-bye, Pope Francis, world mourns humble pontiff, the Vatican head of state. Hoodlums in dawn attack on Osun High Court building. Mr. President returns. IG raises probe panel on Natasha's threat to life allegation against Akpabio. EFCC arrests 2 suspects over the 1.3 trillion naira CBEX scam. NNPCL slashes petrol pump price to 880 naira per litre. IMF urges nations with huge debt to seek restructuring. Okay, which story?
Okay, let me start with the Pope. So as we are aware, we all woke up to the sad passing of, the Pope. And according to the nation, it says the bid stopped for Pope Francis early yesterday, less than 24 hours after celebrating Easter with the faithful. He was 88 years old. They said at 9:45 a.m. local time in Rome, the church announced the death of Pope Francis from Casa Santa Marta. They said that they talked about his life. They said his entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and for his church. And of his church, he taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and most marginalized, and and so on and so forth. And we also had world leaders. We had our president, who also paid his tributes. Our president said that he called on the world to honor the late Pope Francis, not only through tributes, but concrete action that reflects the values of the pontiff stood for, lifting the poor, healing communities, and defending human dignity. We had dignitaries from across the world, paying their tributes to the late Pope. May his soul rest in peace. And for all the Catholic faithfuls, especially, and all Christians generally,
The time of mourning.
Yes, the time of mourning and the end of an era, as they say.
Yes. Okay, let me take the IMF story. So the International Monetary Fund yesterday advised heavily indebted countries to seek debt restructuring where necessary to restore macroeconomic stability and sustainable growth across the world. In the report in Washington, D.C., the managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, said countries with unsustainable public debt need to move proactively to restore sustainability. According to her, countries must take the difficult route of debt restructuring. She called on countries to also take resolute fiscal action to rebuild policy space, setting out gradual adjustments that would respect fiscal frameworks across the nations. Georgieva also outlined grave implications of trade tensions and tariff hikes to countries that differ, and putting that they're also going to plan to put, including putting many countries in tighter financial conditions if they refuse to restructure their loans to IMF. So this is a woman at the head of affairs doing her thing.
Okay, so the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, that's the EFCC, has arrested 2 suspects over the alleged loss of approximately 1.3 trillion to crypto bridge exchange, that's the CBEX. They said 4 Nigerians have been identified with the company, including 2 siblings. None of the names have been unveiled by the anti-graft agency. They also said that Briton had also been implicated, but the extent of his involvement was still under investigation. Now, operatives of the anti-graft agency in charge of the investigation has suspended it because of the public holiday on Friday. They suspended their public holiday to work around the clock, so they were still working even as at Friday. And according to a top source, the EFCC has recorded a breakthrough in arresting the 2 suspects. The source said, "We have started preliminary investigations, and the 2 suspects is a multi-dimensional probe of how CBEX came into the nation's digital asset trading platform." The EFCC chairman, Ola Olukoyede, also traveled, but he returned to the country on Thursday, and he's personally leading the investigation. They said 5 individuals, including a Briton, are under the searchlight so far. They don't want to disclose. They are also not in a hurry so that they don't profile them wrongly. So they are taking their time. They are saying it's also very early to release the names of the suspects, but they are still helping to clarify how the company came into be and how they were operating. So there were speculations that they had they were asking for SEC approval. So the FCC chairman is saying that there's nothing like that. You cannot be operating before asking for that approval, that was very wrong. And investigations will show, a lot more. They said there are different angles to look at it from, how they were able to work with individuals? How do you able to get companies involved and all of that? They're going to sort out everything.
Big scam. Okay, so the United States of America has announced that starting from April 22nd, that there are now 5 new requirements for U.S. visa applicants in Nigeria. One of them is that you must have a matching DS-160 confirmation number. So your confirmation number for your application form must start with the letters, 2 letters AA, and then 00 for you to be able to schedule your appointment. And then the barcode must match that of your appointment. The second one is that you must choose the correct appointment location. So if you chose in your application form that you wanted to go to Abuja, you must go to attend Abuja. You cannot switch or swap
Nothing
it.
changed.
Yes, cannot change it. You must double check the same DS-160 form. If there's any mistakes or whatever, you have to correct it and then rebook an appointment before coming in. And then and you can do that on their AVITS accounts 10 days before coming in. And that rescheduling, if rejected, you have to start all over again. So they said that you don't want people wasting their time, going back and forth. So you must follow these 5 requirements for you to be able to attend any of your visa appointments if you're applying from Nigeria.
Okay, moving on now to Daily Sun. Outpouring of tears, grief over Pope Francis' death. Wike Falana rate gets messier. CBEX oil gas investors hit hard as fraud surpasses 2 trillion naira. NNPCL slashes petrol pump price to 880 naira per litre. Rising energy costs killing industries and manufacturers cry out. Killings, Plateau Christians in mass protest in Jos, Mufang meets stakeholders. Okay, which story are we starting with?
Plateau State. So thousands of Christians from across the state, Plateau State, yesterday stormed the capital, that's Jos, in protest over the recent killings in Bokos and Basa local government areas, which, as we remember, claimed about 100 lives and led to destruction of property. So Christians under the aegis of Church Leaders Denominational Forum on the Plateau were mostly dressed in black and marched from the old government house in Rayfield to the new government house in Little Rayfield, where they presented their protest letter to the president, and it was through the state governor. The letter was signed by Cooking president and a few other stakeholders. And really what they were marching for is the recent wave of violence perpetrated by these terrorists that has resulted in cold-blooded murder of over 50 innocent civilians in Bokos alone, including defenseless women and children. They're saying these unconscionable acts of brutality represent a grievous violation of human rights and a stain on national conscience. And they are saying to the president, please, they also said Christians have, that they came out in their large numbers to once again demonstrate their unity as they grieve in honor of those who have been, who are dead, and also calling to end all killings by armed men and other killers operating in all states in Nigeria. They're crying out for justice and, invited all Christians to join in this march. And I stand with them, in spirit as well. I just hope that this would be the end of, protests like that, where we're protesting for justice, asking for the why. Why is it okay for people to just come into a community and just kill people and go? My help was affected by this. I remember how unconsolable she was, when this happened just a few days ago. It's sad, houses burnt, children killed. It's truly sad, and I just hate that we have to talk about this every time. It just does not seem like there's an end to this.
Yeah, really sad indeed. Let's take one more story for the break.
Yeah, so still on the CBEX story, they're saying that a strong indication emerged at the weekend that the oil and gas investors may have accounted for over 50% losses. Oh. Yes, recorded in the crypto exchange. So yes, they said thousands of Nigerians, that had their fingers burnt. Majority of them were in the oil and gas sector. They were able to infiltrate their companies. They had their WhatsApp groups, mainly. Because I was wondering how come many of us did not hear about it. So that sector largely invested their money. So now they're looking for their administrators of the WhatsApp groups. Some of them have run away. It was deliberately targeting people they know that can cough out a certain amount of money. Said this 1.3 that they are saying is more likely going to be more than 2 trillion if they look into it, because the gas and oil sector lost over 1 trillion already, not to talk of the ordinary Nigerians who invested in this, calling out the regulators that they need to do better to protect Nigerians and their properties.
All right, let's go on a very short break. When we come back, we continue with our review. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.